Today on our 2017 GMC Sierra 3500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Custom Underbed Installation Kit for B&W Companion fifth wheel trailer hitches. Part number BWG NRK 1016-5W. This fifth wheel installation kit is designed to let you install your B&W Companion fifth wheel trailer hitches. The adapters are part number BWR VK3500 or part number BWR VK3400. The underbed design of this kit allows for full truck bed access when you're ready. It's under 5 minutes to convert your empty truck bed into a fifth wheel hitch. We'll start by unlocking our B&W hitch and installing our fifth wheel adapter. We have ours pre-assembled, but you can adjust the uprights here depending on your truck and trailer combination. At this point, the hitch is ready to attach to the trailer. There's a little clip here that you can release. Basically, it's a safety pin. Then you can swing the handle out and you can watch the jaws open. You're ready to back onto your trailer. Once you're secure onto the trailer, you can reinstall the clip. And since the fifth wheel installation kit doubles as a gooseneck hitch, when you're not towing your fifth wheel, you can remove it, and this frees up the hole to reinsert the hitch ball when you need it. Now we'll go ahead and show you how to install the custom underbed kit for the B&W Companion fifth wheel trailer hitches. To begin our installation, I already went ahead and removed our spare tire temporarily, and now we're going to need to remove the spare tire guard here. There's going to be two 13mm bolts that are holding it on. We're going to have one right here towards the back of our leaf spring, and then one farther up just right in front of our exhaust hanger right here. I'm going to be using a 13mm socket to remove those. We'll go ahead and set this aside for now. Now, right above our axle, right above our exhaust, we're going to have a heat shield here. Now we're going to need to remove this as well. Now on the very ends, we're going to have one bolt holding it on, and then towards the outside of our truck, we're going to have two bolts on the side holding it in place. And again, I'm going to be using a 13mm socket to remove it. We're going to go ahead and pull this out, and we're not going to be reinstalling this. Our next step is going to be marking the location for our hole. Now we're going to want to make sure that the tape measure is hooked on the very edge of our bed, and we're going to measure according to what kind of bed we have, and we'll find those measurements in the instructions. Now once we have our measurement lengthwise, we're going to need to measure the distance between our two wheel wells. And once we find the distance between our two wheel wells, then we're going to have to find the halfway distance, and where those two lines intersect is where our center point is going to be. And we can always come back and double check our first measurement to make sure that it lines up. Okay. Now the location that I marked, I'm going to come back with a 1/4 inch drill bit. I'm going to drill a pilot hole, making it a little bit easier when I come back with my hole saw. Just want to mention you want to be extra careful when you're drilling, and it's always a good idea to double check underneath the vehicle to make sure there's no lines or anything critical that we might hit. Now before I drill my hole out, I took a piece of old wood that I had laying around, and I actually have several different holes drilled in here that match up with my hole saw. Now when I begin to start drilling, I'm actually going to stand on this so that way I don't have to worry about my hole saw skipping around or causing any more damage to my bed. Now it's never a good idea to leave bare metal exposed on your vehicle. So I'm going to take a little bit of clear spray paint, that way it'll help seal it up and I don't have to worry about any rust or corrosion. If we come to the passenger side wheel well, we're going to notice that some of our trucks may have a liner and some of them may not. But we're going to need to make a notch section here in the liner and the piece of metal behind it in order to get our braces in place. So if we find our jout stop on our frame and we go directly up, I'm going to mark out a notch right here. I'm just doing it in a triangle shape, roughly about a couple inches wide, up to the top of the wheel well liner here. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use a pair of tin snips and just cut the liner and then cut the metal piece behind it separately. But I'm going to be using a rotary tool, and again I'm just going to cut the liner by itself and then come back and cut the metal. Now the notch we had cut out, we're going to take our forward panel here and it's going to be the angled section that's going to have some holes. And you want to make sure that the angle is facing up and then the holes are facing towards the rear of the truck. Now we're going to take our bracket, we're going to slide it in between in the notch that we cut out, and we're going to want to slide it all the way in until it meets both sides of our frame rail. Now our crossmember plate right here, we're going to need to take a 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolt, and we're going to find the second hole from the driver's side, which should be right about here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass my bolt through, and I'm going to take a rubber O-ring that's provided in our kit, and I'm going to slide that O-ring as close as I can to the bracket itself, just so that my bolt won't fall out. And with that in place, we're going to want to slide our bracket as far forward as we can right now. We're going to want to go past the hole that we have drilled out, and we're going to want to go as far forward as we can. Now we can take our rear crossmember section, and if you'll notice, we're going to have several threaded holes going across it. When we slide this bar in place, we're going to want to make sure that the holes are closest to the frame, since they are slightly offset. Now it may be a little difficult to slide it in vertically, so I'm going to put it in horizontally, slide it across till it's reaching both sides of the frame. Now in order to get our crossmember rotated into the correct position, I'm going to take a pair of channel locks. We can grab it and rotate it to the way we need it, making sure that the holes are slightly closer to the frame since they are slightly offset. And we're going to slide this as far back right now as possible. So we're going to need to put a lifting device in place, because when we put our center section in, we're going to need to have it supported so that we can bolt it up to our front and rear crossmember sections. When we get ready to put our center section in place, now we're going to want to make sure that the offset of the hole is towards the back of the truck and that the handle over here is towards the driver's side. So you're going to want to slide it over the exhaust. We're going to have some lines in the way. I'm going to have to move them out of the way a little bit. If we can slide the center section as close as we can to our lifting device. Now our front crossmember section, we're going to want to slide it and line it up with the holes in our center section, and then we're going to want to rotate it so that we can allow it to stand up, and so that bolt that we installed previously with the O-ring, it pokes through the center section. We can take another one of our 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolts, and I'm going to slide it through my crossmember and the center section, and then I'm going to follow it up with a 1/2 inch lock washer, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to take a 1/2 inch nut, secure it hand tight for right now. Now we're going to repeat this for all the remaining holes that are in our crossmember section and the center section on the front side. Now for the rear crossmember section, we're going to start sliding it towards our center section, and we're going to try to line it up as close with the holes as we can. Now we're going to come back and we're going to take a 1/2 inch by 2 inch bolt, and from the inside, we're going to thread it. From the inside of our center section, we're going to come out and thread it into our crossmember here, and we're going to start with our 2 inch 1/2 inch bolt, follow it with a 1/2 inch lock washer, and then finally we're going to follow it again with a 1/2 inch flat washer before we come from the inside and start threading it in place. Now it may take a little bit of adjustment to get it lined up, but once we do, we can start putting our bolts in hand tight. And we're going to repeat that for all the other remaining holes in our center section. We can get ready to put our side plates in place, and we're going to want to make sure that the 2 tabs on our side plate are going to go in between the 2 crossmember sections on the front and the back. So we can line up the tabs and rotate it so it's sitting against our frame. And you'll notice that the 2 holes are going to line up with a couple threaded holes in the frame, and we're going to be using existing weld nuts to attach it. So we're going to take our 16mm cap bolts, followed by a 5/8 lock washer, and then finally followed by a 5/8 flat washer. And that's the combination we're going to be using to bolt it to our frame. So we can just line up the holes with our bracket and the threaded holes in our frame, and we're just going to thread these in hand tight for right now. Now on the front and the back, those tabs that are in between our crossmember sections, we're going to take one of our 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolts and we're going to slide it all the way through. So coming from the front of our crossmember section, we're going to take our bolt and slide it all the way through the side plate as well. Now we're going to come back with a 1/2 inch flat washer, followed by a 1/2 inch lock washer, and then finally going to secure it down with a 1/2 inch nut. And again, we're just going to leave everything hand tight for right now. Now the ear on the back of our side plate, it is going to be going into a threaded hole on the rear crossmember here. So we're going to take another one of our 1/2 inch by 1.5 inch bolts, but this time we're going to follow it up with a 1/2 inch lock washer, and then we're going to follow it up with a 1/2 inch flat washer. And we're going to line up the holes in our brackets and we're going to thread it into place. Again, only doing it hand tight for right now. And once we have all the bolts in on this side, we'll go ahead and repeat the same process for the other side as well. I'm going to come back and using a 3/4 inch socket, I'm going to tighten down all my 1/2 inch hardware on my center section. And we're going to repeat that for all the remaining hardware. And we're going to find the torque specs in our instructions. Using a 24mm socket, I'm going to torque down the 16mm bolts that are holding my side plate to the frame. And we'll go ahead and repeat that for all the 16mm bolts. Now using a 3/4 inch socket, I'm going to torque down my 1/2 inch bolts that are securing my side plate to the crossmembers. And we'll repeat that for all the other 1/2 inch hardware. Just want to keep in mind, when you go to tighten the furthest front 1/2 inch bolt, you will need to use a 3/4 inch wrench and socket. We can get ready to put our handle in place, and this is what's going to unlatch and latch our locking mechanism for the ball that's going to be installed in the bed. Now there is a notch in the side plate, but as you can see, our fender liner is going to get in the way. So I'm going to make a rough estimate of where it needs to be, and I'm going to make a small cut, just enough so that my handle can come through. So I'm going to pull it away slightly. I'm just going to make a small section cut out, more of just a relief so that I can get my handle in place and we can trim it up the rest of the way once we make sure that's where it needs to be. So it looks like it's in the right area, so we can just cut that hole a little bit wider. And our handle should be able to slide in there easily. We can go ahead and put the handle and slide it all the way in. Now we can go underneath and start attaching it. So there is a notch in the center section that if the handle didn't get through, you're going to need to push it back out and make sure that it's going through this small hole here. Now if we come to the latch itself, I'll go ahead and push my handle out of the way, and I'm going to bring my latching mechanism back and lock it open, and we'll see that there's a square hole. Now we're going to need to line up our handle with the hole. Coming from the back side where the square hole is, I'm going to take my carriage bolt that's supplied to my kit, and I'm going to put it through the hole in my latching mechanism and the handle, making sure it goes through both. And then I'm going to come back with a flange nut and secure it on the back side. I'm going to come back using a 1/2 inch wrench, and I'm going to tighten up that nut on the back of my carriage bolt. Now you may need to have a little bit of patience, but when you begin to tighten this, you're going to want to put a slight amount of pressure pushing that bolt into the square hole so that it can gauge it and not just spin. And when we tighten this up, we don't need to go crazy, we just want it nice and snug. Now on the underside of our hitch here, we're going to have 4 holes, 2 on each side of our receiver tube where the ball goes. Now we're going to need to drill these out to a 1/2 inch because that's where we're going to be installing our safety chain loops. So coming from the underside of the bed, I'm going to take a 1/2 inch drill bit and I'm going to drill up through the bed. And we're going to repeat that for the other 3 holes as well. In our kit, we're going to have a couple of U-bolts, and we're going to take them and we're just going to drop them straight down the holes that we just drilled. So here's where our safety chain loops fell down. And now I'm going to take the spring they provide us in our kit, and I'm going to slide it over one end of the U-bolt. And then I'm going to take my 1/2" lock nut that they provide in the kit, and I'm going to thread it on hand tight. And we can go ahead and do the same thing for the other side of our U-bolt. I'm going to come back using a 3/4 inch socket, and I'm going to tighten that nut until it's nice and flush with the bottom of the bolt. And we'll repeat that for all the remaining. So when we're done, it should look like this. We can take our ball now, and you got to make sure that that latch is released so that it's completely open, and we can take our ball, line it up with the hole, and we can drop it down. Now if we move to the driver's side wheel well area, we can latch it in place. So we come to the handle, we can release it, and it'll make sure the ball is nice and secure. We can go ahead and put our shield back in place. And that'll finish up our look at the Custom Underbed Installation Kit for B&W Companion 5th wheel trailer hitches. Part number BWG NRK 1016-5W on our 2017 GMC Sierra 3500.